To see you all. And so we've been exploring the elements, and this can be a bit of a challenging practice sometimes for us because we're so separate now from nature, so separate now from the world. And it feels like this might have nothing to do with mindfulness, but it has all to do with mindfulness. And so there's this curiosity about the elements kind of comes from the understanding that our body is part of earth and that the same elements that are in earth are in our bodies as well. And so then we kind of learn a little bit of perspective with this practice. We kind of learn to see the body as processes together. So it's just a process together, and it belongs to nature and it doesn't belong to us. And so that comes from the understanding that there is much suffering in the body if we let the mind get so attached to the body, thinking my body, this is mine, this is who I am, then we suffer a lot because the body deteriorates. And so with this practices, we get to not only feel our connection to nature in this way, to know that the same water that runs in our bodies runs in every river, runs in every ocean. And so with this understanding, we can proceed to see that, so this body is made out of water, just like the earth is mostly water as well. And so there's a couple of things that I like to start with. And one is this binding property of water, keeping it all together, right? That's what water does. It binds things. When I was learning this, I had a hard time understanding that and practicing with the water element. But then eventually I remember being a child and building a sand castle and at the beach. And you know how when you mix just the right amounts of water, it kind of stays all the sand that's loose and kind of just all these little particles just become this one thing, right? So that's the idea with water in the body as well, that it just becomes, it looks like one solid thing. It's all bind by the water, and the water is a binding element. And so that's kind of what we're looking at with water, how it has this element of binding things together, making things seem like one unit. And many things that I think, and this I was actually reinforced by one of my teachers once when I wasn't sure if I was understanding correctly this element of water. How does that work? How does that, how do I relate to it? And that was the same example that my teacher had when I asked this question. And, she just said, well, it's like building a sandcastle. And I was like, all right, good. And so if we think about everything that floats in water, it just seems like one unit when we see it together. But another thing before we go into the meditation to keep in mind is the qualities of water, right? How water can become solid, right, into ice, and it seems very solid. But interestingly enough, when you put it in water or in an element that's water-like, it floats, right? Ice is one of those, the only solid things that floats, I think. And I'm not sure if I'm 100% of this because I'm not a scientist in that sense, but it seems to me like that's the only thing that floats. And so I'm going to open up the chat because I'd like to hear a little more from you on this and see what you think about this properties of water and see how you relate to them. What are some observations that you might have made around water, something that we're so in contact with all the time? So there is the element of it floating, first of all, which is a pretty interesting thing. Yeah, boats, yes, boats float. So it has this property to even allow huge things to float, right? And structures to float. And so it's pretty interesting. Water is like emotions that change and transform. Yes, constantly changing, right? It's got this strength, and it also can be like very still, right? Very still, sometimes flowing. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So kind of flowing like a river, right? Flowing like the ocean. Water cleans. Yeah. The moon and the water are related. I like that, Laura. Thank you. Yeah. Um, enveloping and rejuvenating. Yeah. Shapeless. Yeah. Formless. Isn't that interesting how it's shapeless and formless, but then it can take shape on whatever you put it, right? If you put in something that's like a bowl, it's kind of like, you know, round. If you put in a square, it kind of takes that shape. So it's pretty interesting. Um, can be soft as material. Yeah. Flowing like a stream over. Sound of water is often soothing. Yeah, that's something that I was going to actually talk about. It is soothing. It's kind of like we understand it as part of us. The body kind of relates it, right? The body relates to water in this way, like it's part of what it is. It calls to it. Anything can float if it's lighter than the mass of liquid it displaces. Oh, I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Waves dance in the sea. That's right. The waves dance in the sea. Yeah. So it intertwines with other elements, doesn't it? The wind, right? It intertwines with other elements. It's such a beautiful element as well. The body being about 90%. Yeah. Yeah. Tsunami. Yeah, it can have that strength. It can then actually come and intertwine with the winds and kind of become this force, right? And then how about gravity, right? How it kind of just has this kind of interesting property with gravity. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think I feel so compelled to this practice, actually, the water practice, and I think there's so much for us to learn. Steam, yeah, isn't that crazy how it becomes steam? Yes. And so as we do our meditation, I'm reading Snow. Yes. So when he gets cold again, how it goes with the heat element, right? We talked about fire. It becomes cold. It becomes snow. It becomes hot. And so it kind of just flows through everything. Um, yeah, it can form eddies that go in circles. Interesting. Yeah, thank you. So, so it's pretty interesting also how the earth is such a big container for water and just like the body. So this is kind of, and on Friday we did the lake meditation, right? And how the lake kind of settles in the earth, right? Taking that shape. And so today we're just gonna kind of make this a little more personal. So today is relating how you can feel the element of water in the body. And this is again with the perspective that this element of water is in the body as much as it's in earth, because the body belongs to nature. This is the mind's work when he thinks it's mine, my body, this is I, but really it's not. It belongs to nature. And it seems like nature is really good at taking care of everything that grows. We, on the other hand, not so good at taking care of this body sometimes, right? I can definitely speak for myself on that, like eating the wrong things sometimes, not getting enough rest. So all these things that kind of don't contribute to the body. And so maybe just we can start out by just taking in a deep breath, settling in, just noticing how you feel, just noticing right now what's present for you. See if you can tune into this element of water. Noticing in the mouth. You might even notice it in the nose, the moisture in the eyes. It's here very present in this way as well. So just for a moment, tuning into this element. We might notice how the mouth fills up with this element. and how water lubricates the eyes as well. So just tuning in and seeing where else you feel this element. Could be sweat, right? Feel it in certain areas of the body. Just taking this time to get really familiar with water in the body. And now just allowing yourself to feel the earth element here as well, the solid body sitting here. And I'm feeling the pull of gravity in this way as it interacts with the solidity of the body. Body just resting on the surface that's holding you. And how active is the fire element? Is there warmth? Is there coolness? And perhaps you can feel the lungs expanding and contracting. And the heart pumping blood, another element, just like a river flowing right through the body. And just in this way, it irrigates every cell in the body. It nourishes. So seeing if you can tune into your heartbeat if that's possible, and if not, just allowing for a sense of relating to the solid body sitting here, noticing any other sensations. And here's when we talk about sensations, this is exactly what we're feeling, the elements at play, tingling, the numbness, the heaviness. And there might be a perception that there's stillness at this moment. But in the depths of the body, there's lots happening. Just like looking at a lake, there's lots of life happening underneath the surface. And all we're invited to do is just sensing these elements here, the heaviness, the lightness, the numbness, the tingling, the heat, the coolness. And now the fluidity, the moisture, the dryness. And even though the water element is everywhere in the body, yeah, there are some places where we can notice it the most. Starting with the mouth, the tongue, Bruce Lee says in a quote, "Be like water, my friend." He says, "Be like water making its way through cracks." it adjusts to the object, and you shall find a way around it and through it, just like water. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. You put water into a bottle and it becomes a bottle. You put it in a teapot and it becomes a teapot. Now water can flow and it can also crash. He says, be water, my friend. And so the invitation is to recognize that the body is water. And maybe just acquire some of the properties that this body has. Shapeless, flexible, strong as well. It's got a strength. Water can pierce to rock. It can break solids. But it can be still and it can be calm. And water understands the impermanence of these emotions, even the states. And water can be nourishing, just like tears can be nourishing sometimes. And remembering the invitation to come back again and again to this element in the body. Whatever it is that is more noticeable to you. You might notice how the saliva kind of accumulates in the mouth, and you can feel it passing through the throat every time you swallow. And the body knowing that it goes back to its source all the time. Take water from the external world and bring it in to the body as nourishing. So this same water passing in your throat is the same water that moves in oceans, rivers, and every body of water in the planet. It's no different. And you might say that just like the ocean has to work with external elements, our being has to work with external elements in contact with the body as well. And at times we might say that the ocean is mad, furious, when storms come. But we understand that it will pass. And every time we're caught in a storm out in the world, we don't despair. We know that it will pass and the sun will come out again. We know that the seasons will change. So in the same way, nature teaches us to work through everything that happens in our own lives. And there might be times when the ocean is still, the water is still, and might be an invitation for us to rejoice in this water, in the stillness of the moment. But we have an understanding that this will change too. And just in this way, you might get ready to go to the beach one day to go for a surf and realize that you can't get in the water. Or maybe there's no waves. And if you watch a surfer, the surfer just sits on the top of the waves, waiting patiently for a wave to come. So they had to learn how to work with the element of water. And in the same way, we can relate to all the storms that we go through in life. Our expectations for how things should be. And the storms that happen when they don't go our way, when something unexpected happens, and our need to control. So the invitation is to notice and understand that we can't resist the storm, that it will pass. And here is this loving awareness that is curious, kind, and patient. Trying to control how we feel is almost the same as trying to control water. It's pliable, it's flexible. So there's some qualities that are worth remembering. Lao Tzu invites us to contemplate contemplate his words as he talks about rivers. He says, our life has not been an ascent up one side of a mountain and down the other. We did not reach a peak, only to decline and die. We have been as drops of water born in the ocean and sprinkled on earth in a gentle rain. We became a spring and then a stream, and finally a river, flowing deeper and stronger, nourishing all it touches as it nears its home once again. He says, don't accept the modern myths of aging. You're not declining. You're not fading away into usefulness. You are a sage, a river at its deepest and most nourishing. Sit by a riverbank sometime and watch attentively as the river tells you of your life. So maybe taking in a deep breath. Noticing this body. Celebrating it. And knowing how it is an ecosystem on its own, just like planet Earth is. This body that belongs to the earth. So I thank you for your time in this formal practice. Thank you for listening, for practicing with me.